Welcome back to the Vegans Who Live podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Sellers, otherwise known as Miss Meatless Muscle, and I'm joined by my co-host, John Thomas, the bodybuilding vegan. What's up, John?
Oh, a lot's up. It's been a crazy freaking week. I even trying to slow down have not slowed down at all. But we've got an incredible guest on today. Somebody I've known from Instagram for at least a few years now, looked up to for a long time. I was actually surprised when he messaged me back um, for the first time, but then we've talked for a few years now. We got Nick Squire on here, also known as Meaty McScorely on Instagram. Nick, I don't want to butcher this, but I do know you're based on the West Coast, so the opposite of us. You are a power lifter. I believe you set some records. You're covered in tattoos, big ass beard, father,
Yeah, all of that's
and
correct.
and you shoot guns. So we got a few
Yeah,
things in common.
yeah, yeah. I'm
uh,
I'm in Sacramento now. I moved here from Los Angeles a couple years ago. So I've been on the West Coast for a long time. I have a daughter. She's 10, and yeah, I love to shoot.
Hell yeah.
Very cool. Have you always been on the West Coast?
Yeah, yeah. Born and raised.
Wow, yeah, that's impressive.
I was in Texas and they had an open carry law that was pretty loose. And at one of the Metroflex gyms, you'd go in there and there'd be guys squatting 7 plates and they'd have a 1911 on their hip at the same time. And I'm just
Yeah,
like, dang, that's a dude I don't want to mess with at all.
don't
But
mess
then,
with
yeah,
Texas, man. They're not joking.
no, not at all. All right. Well, we've got a few questions listed aside. We have a little bit of a formula here that's been panning out for us pretty well. We start off with wins of the week, and then we jump into a shaker cup question game that Brooke has been so kind of produced for us. Because I'm still talking and I'm always talking, I'll just jump into my win real quick.
Yeah.
um, I think it was this weekend. I think it was this weekend. I don't even know. I was at an event with Sean, and we did about $800 in charity through table sales. Got to eat a. I ate too much food. I actually got a voice note from my coach when I got home. He said, "I don't know what you're doing on your cheat meal days because it's sounding like it's a whole cheat day. I'm putting my foot down. You need to stop." So I got some much needed guidance to slow down my role there and some more clarity on how Sean and I are going to continue to build out the Vegans Explore network, at least on my end. And so I'll count that as my win, getting some more clarity on where I want to go with my life. And then I'll hand it over to Brooke.
I like it. Yeah, I always gotta tell my clients, like, cheat meal, guys, not cheat day, because, people will just snowball. But yeah, good for you. And awesome. $800 for charity. That's great. So I would say my win from the week, kind of just piggybacking on my win from last week. I came off my thyroid meds, the T3, T4, and I have just been feeling amazing. Like, it's insane. I feel like a new person. I lost another 2 pounds, but like even better than that, I just like feel so much better. Like, I have less anxiety. My lifts are better. My strength is going back up slowly, but it's going. And I just like I just feel more like myself. It's kind of amazing, really. So I'm just gonna keep rolling with it and see how I continue to progress here. But yeah, that would my win for the week.
Hell yeah, dude. I know you've been trying to get this issue solved for a while, and it's frustrating as hell when you're putting in all the work and there's just one variable that's not lining up. And I'm glad you and your coach figured that out. So, yay.
Thanks. Yeah. So what about Nick? What is your win for the week?
So we got the plant-built vegan strong 2024 team finalized. We'll be in Atlantic City in October, and one of the objectives is to try and win as many categories and medals as possible as a team out there. And we brought in another 100-kilo powerlifter to the team, which means that I get to go up to 110 kilo, 242 pounds. So my win for the week is that I get to eat even more for the next few months. It's it's beyond a cheat meal or a cheat day. It's an everyday thing now. So that's my win.
Oh, I wish that was my win for the week. Do you track calories? Like, do you know how many calories you're going to be consuming?
Yeah, so when I make a shift in my diet, I'll track everything in Chronometer for a couple weeks, just get a good base. I really only track calories and protein, and just get a good idea of what an average meal is looking like. And then after a few weeks of that, just build off of that. I don't track too closely. It's not anywhere near as specific as it is for y'all in bodybuilding. For me, it's just eat as much as possible, really, and then mitigate that with a cut headed into a meet to make weight.
Yeah.
I'm always scrolling through your stories, and it's like a whole pizza with a bottle of vegan ranch, and I'm just like, this man knows how to live life.
I've
Yeah,
always said, sorry, I was just gonna say, I've always said, like, if I ever give up bodybuilding, I'm just gonna go to powerlifting, because that's the hardest part about bodybuilding is the dieting down. Like, otherwise it's so much fun. The training is fun, but the dieting down sucks. So powerlifting, you just get so much more food because it's just fuel.
it's truly if you're looking for a sport or a discipline that fits into like a hedonistic lifestyle, it's definitely powerlifting, because there's so much of it that's just gratuitous amounts of eating and a lot of rest. I didn't, I've known bodybuilders training or traveling with the plant built team and spending time around the bodybuilding team during comp. It really opened my eyes to how difficult that is, and a lot more respect for what you guys do. It's an incredible amount of work, especially prep week and heading into a competition, a show like that. It's wild to me.
Yeah, it's not for the weak-minded or weak of heart. And I'm
Yeah,
not saying you. I'm just saying anyone. Like this shit's hard. I have
yeah,
a
the
friend.
discipline is insane.
He has a background in powerlifting, and he bodybuilded for like a year, and then he's like, you know what, I'm going back to powerlifting. I just want to get strong. I was like, dude, I don't blame you. It's more
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
Let me pick your brain real quick, or at least get a little bit more backstory from you. So, what is this team, this organization you're working with? What is your guys' mission? How are you? I mean, how are you changing the world with that?
Yeah, so Plant Built has been around for a long, long time. They took a hiatus for a few years, a couple years ago, came back in 2022. And basically the objective is we roll out to a fitness expo with teams in multiple disciplines. So we have a bodybuilding team, which is like kind of the bread and butter of the Plant Built team. There's a kettlebell team, there's a CrossFit team, a powerlifting team. We recently added strongman, which is so cool. And the idea is to go to a non-vegan expo and just dominate. We enter all the events, we bring in the best athletes that we can find, and just win as many competitions as possible, and kind of show through that not only are there vegans in strength sports, but that they are competitive and they can compete at a high level and they can win at a high level. And that's the idea. We have a booth there. We bring a lot of products from our sponsors, jerkies and protein powders and a lot of BCAs and stuff like that, and just show that that's an option. And we're not just out there, saying it's possible, but we're kind of putting our putting proof there that we're here and we're walking away with a significant amount of wins. The strongman team cleaned up last year, won several first place awards. The powerlifting team, several gold medals, silver medals in that. And it's incredible to watch. And it's really cool to walk around after or before your event and see all the other athletes competing and watch the bodybuilding competition and watch the CrossFit games, stuff like that. It's a lot of fun.
Oh
That's
yeah.
really cool. If there was anyone listening who is a competitive vegan athlete, like, what would they need to do to join the Plant Built team? Like, is there certain requirements or like any sort of criteria they need to meet?
It's just being at the top of your game. It's mostly we reach out to athletes as the teams progress. Like I watched and admired the Plant Built team for a long time. I always shot messages across and just said like, hey, if you're looking, like, they didn't have a powerlifting team until recently. They did it in the beginning, and then they took some years off from powerlifting. But I'd always shoot messages, like putting myself out there. But the coach of each team, they talk to other athletes on that team. So my coach, Ryan Stills, he's also the coach for the Plant Built powerlifting team, and he and I will kind of discuss, and he'll talk to other athletes on the team on who would you recommend, who should we bring in, and we really try to bring in men and women from as many different weight classes as possible, so that we can walk away and we can say, listen, as a team, we took every single category that we entered, we ended up in first place in. So I waited for years to get the ask, and it finally happened. But I know there's a lot of people want to join the team and just keep it up. You know, we're always looking out for strong powerlifters, especially.
Very cool.
Now, let me clarify, because I do think I reached out a while back. You
Yeah.
guys, as a team, are fully natural, right? No performance enhancing drugs. You're at tested events.
Yeah. So the events that we try to go to are tested. The athletes on the team are tested, and obviously, it's not a disparaging to athletes that aren't tested. It's just we know that's going to be the first thing people bring up is like, oh yeah, these guys came to an event and they won, but the misinformation, misunderstanding of what steroids are and what they do, it just gives people that opportunity. I know we'll go into this obviously on this discussion, but the big issue I think a lot is most athletes who are on gear are not upfront with it, and it
Yeah.
makes that situation a lot more complicated. I train with, and I know people that are on gear, and I train with them day in and day out, and I have no objection to it, but it just gives people that opportunity to discredit what you're doing. And a lot of that comes from a misunderstanding. I see conversations all the time where someone will bring up vegan protein, and the person they're talking to will bring up a vegan powerlifter, a bodybuilder, and they'll say, "Oh, well, they're on steroids, so the protein doesn't matter." And that, like that, highlights to me how little people understand about steroids and probably protein too. If they think that steroids are a replacement somehow for protein, or they make it so that you don't need protein if you're running gear. So, yeah, the plant built team is all natural, and the events that we go to are all natural as well.
Cool.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think that's why I got shut down. I think I had reached out to see if they're interested in having me on there. I'm pretty open that I am not natural. And I do think it's good that we have people on both sides, because people will look at me on the meat eating side and be like, oh, well, he's only bigger than me because he uses gear. And it's like, well, yes, me tracking my food and basically living this lifestyle 24/7 has nothing to do with it. It's just the fact that I use drugs and you don't. But then we got people like you, like, that they could aspire to be like if they don't want to go down that path. So I think it's good to have.
100%. Yeah, and I've had conversations with Danny, who also runs the plant built team, and absolutely, we've had conversations about how we need it. We need representatives of vegan bodybuilding and powerlifting on both sides. People who are on gear, people who are not, because obviously you can't go to an IFBB pro show as a natural athlete and hang, right. So that's not doesn't do us any good. So we need people that are on gear as well to compete in those spaces and show that it's regardless of if you're on gear or not. The vegan lifestyle is compatible, and it's possible to run either way.
Yeah, I do think for like your overall mission and for Plant Built to just have this like really strong foundation where people can't refute your success with any sort of argument is a good idea. So I can definitely understand the mission behind like let's not give anybody a reason to doubt our team of vegans. And I do like that you point out that it's not necessarily like the team's decision, but it's also just like people are so misinformed about performance enhancing drugs. Like you said, I mean, you could give a guy on the couch who sits on the couch all day and eats potato chips some PEDs, but he's still not going to look like a bodybuilder. So like, but people don't know, like everyday people who aren't athletes, they're not, talking to athletes, engaging with athletes, they don't know any better. But it's just one more thing. We see it all the time in comments, on a great vegan post. Oh, well, he does steroids, or oh, well, they do this, they take that. It's like that doesn't mean anything. But to them, it's one argument against veganism. So I can definitely understand where you guys are coming from.
Yeah, and it comes from not even just the vegan space, but anytime there's any kind of jealousy online is where it really comes from, or an insecurity online. That's the first comment, is to kind of discredit what someone's doing, discredit the hard work they're doing, discredit the discipline and how much work goes into this, to just say, oh, they're on steroids. It allows that person to feel better about themselves in the situation. But and the plant built concept of competing naturally and having natural athletes. I mean, it's something that I've been doing for years. When I started powerlifting and competing, is I noticed that anytime I competed in an untested fed or untested meet, I would see more of those comments. And so for the past several years, I've specifically only sought out tested meats or tested feds because it just makes that a little bit easier to point to when that comes up and to say, listen, I only compete tested. So that doesn't really that accusation doesn't really work in this situation.
So I want to see just how strong could a natural plant-based lifter be. How much do you weigh, Nick, in freedom units?
220 pounds is what I compete at.
And how tall are you?
I am 5'9".
Okay. How much do you squat?
I squat. My all-time squat is 675.
Amazing.
Damn.
Yeah, that was outside of comp, so it doesn't really count. My top comp squat is 640. I was heading into a meet in Bakersfield in 2019, and I had probably the best prep I've ever had my entire life. It was a NASPower tested meet for USPA, and I was about 2 weeks out. I was squatting like 650 for sets of 5, like just it was insane. And then about 2 weeks out, I was wrestling with my dog and just threw something in my back, and I was like, "It's 2 weeks out. I can't stop." And so I pushed it. I did the meet on like 3 grams of ibuprofen, just tried to get through it. Had a terrible meet. 2.5 years it took to fully recover from that. And so I'm building back from it now. Just had my 640 squat in a comp a month and a half ago. So trying to get back to that. But, that was definitely an unfortunate situation, but we'll get back. I'll get back to 675. And I'm looking to pull 675 or 700 on deadlift here in a couple of weeks. May 11th will be 10 years that I've been vegan. So I'm hoping to pull something big to kind of celebrate that.
Hell yeah.
Love it.
For those that like to do mental math, you're pretty much squatting 3 times your body weight.
Yeah, I've been able to deadlift 3 times my body weight. So I'm looking to squat that. So if I can squat, 300 keys, which is 660, at 100 kilo weight, 220 weight, then we'll hit that number. It's not too far off.
You were strong, sir. That's a lot of weight.
It's impressive.
Wait, but what do you bench? That's the most important one.
But my bench, I've benched 415 again outside of comp. I feel like I'm cursed because I'll have an incredible bench prep. I'll be hitting 4 in prep over and over again, and then meet day, I don't know what happens, but I've benched like 387 in like 3 consecutive meets. And if it happens one more time, I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna quit. I can't bench 387 in a meet ever again. I got to break 4, but it's coming up.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. I've followed you for a long time. You're usually, at least for a long time, you trained out of your garage, right?
Yeah. So obviously the pandemic shut down the gyms out here, and at that time I was prepping for USPA nationals in Ohio before that got kind of canceled. But I thought, I got to keep training. I can't take a break. And so I immediately just started like scouring the internet. We all know how hard it was to find equipment at that time, but I was able to throw together a squat rack and a deadlift platform, and get my hands on about 650 pounds in plates. And I trained out of my garage for a bit. And for the first year, you're like, this is great. I don't have to wait for a squat rack. I can pick whatever music I want. I can take as many breaks as I want. No one's waiting. And then, and it's slightly embarrassing, but there's nobody to witness this, and I need that. I need someone to be watching. It's an ego thing, but like when I put 600 pounds on a bar, I want people to stop and see what I'm doing, and it's hard to train alone in your garage. There's other issues like being 30 seconds away from work. I can walk in and get pulled into something at work real easily. Where I'm at the gym, I can be like, hey, listen, I'm at the gym, we'll be back in an hour kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun. It's still out there for days when I don't have time to get to the gym and back, but I much prefer training in an environment, especially with other powerlifters. That energy is just something you can't match being in a garage by yourself.
I agree 1,000%. That's why I moved, is to literally for a better gym. I moved cities for a better gym, and having people as invested in you,
Yeah.
as invested as you are there helps, and then also being around people that are better than you, objectively
Yeah.
stronger and better. So
100%. I mean, that adage, you never want to be the strongest person at your gym, is 100% accurate. And in my garage, I was always the strongest person in my gym.
conversely, also the weakest.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I can never work
Recently,
out from home.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to keep that energy. And after the pandemic and things opened up, I changed gyms to a powerlifting specific gym. It was actually around the time that I blew up my bicep, and my coach was my coach. You know, I told my coach, this is late March, April of last year. We had Plant Built on the schedule for October. You know, I had a full distal rupture of my bicep, where the bicep's no longer connected to the bone near your elbow. It moves all the way up. And so they have to go in and they have to reattach it. They put a Kevlar button into my bone and they reattach the bicep. But before the surgery, I called my coach and said, listen, I just fully ruptured my bicep tendon. I think, I'm not going to be able to compete in October. And if you know Ryan Stills, he's undergone several shoulder surgeries, and he's still competing IPF Worlds. He's one of the strongest people I've ever met. And he looked at me and he said, Nick, like, were you looking for an excuse not to compete, not to train? And that was like the perfect thing for me to hear. I was like, no, I'm not. He's like, then we'll figure out a way. And so he's like, you need to find a gym that has, a good SSB bar and a good belt squat, and we can keep you training around the arm injury. I went and I bought a deadlift harness. It was like this seat belt contraption that hooked onto the bar. And so for several months, I couldn't bench, but I was able to deadlift and squat using the SSB bar and using the belt squat. And 5 months after the surgery, I came out and I had one of my best powerlifting performances I had at that point at the 2023 Plant Built in Atlantic City. So came into that gym, Third Street Barbell here in Sacramento, and I mean the environment it makes it, and I recall, like, I trained for the first several years at just a Gold's Gym, and I was the only dude there doing powerlifting. People telling you to keep it down with the deadlift, making too much noise and stuff like that, and it worked for a long time. And I went to my first meet, and I was like, I learned more going to that meet for one day than I had in like the previous 2 years training out of this Gold's Gym. And so being able to train in a powerlifting gym, being around that that knowledge and that focus and that passion every day, it's a night and day difference.
Wow, what a good coach too. I mean, me and John talk about that all the time with our clients. Like, sometimes it's not about telling people what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. And it can really just light a fire in you. And you actually were very receptive to it and took action. But what a strong statement for your coach to make. But I love it.
Yeah, Ryan, I mean, he's been at my last couple of meets because we're on the same team. And heading out into a big third squat or deadlift, he's a big dude, very intimidating, but the nicest guy you've ever met. But he'll get right in your face and he'll tell you exactly what you need to hear, and that emotion and that fire that gets lit. I mean, it's unbelievable. He knows exactly what to say, and he knows his athletes on emotional and a training level, and he's really able to find what motivates us and what pushes us.
That's awesome.
So I remember. Oh,
sorry. Go ahead, John.
Sorry. Tying back into the deadlift harness, I remember seeing this and thinking, like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, they can't stop him. He tore his bicep and he's still deadlifting. And I was like,
I don't recommend it, and I wouldn't tell anybody to do it. And I realized that it was foolish, but I had the surgery on a Wednesday, and then on Friday, I was out in my garage doing 585 on the deadlift harness with the cast and the suture still in. It wasn't smart, but that's kind of the mentality I have, is like, you got to be a little bit stupid, you got to be a little bit foolish if you want to make progress here.
My dad used to say, if you're gonna be dumb, you got to be tough. So you were tough, sir.
And
Yeah, well, I think in like top level athletes, I'm a coach, so I work with a few. I'd like to think of myself and Brooke in that category as well. Like usually with top level athletes, it's not pushing them to do more. It's as a coaching position, it's like, okay, let me pull you back 10% because you're going to kill yourself. So yeah, I think you're in that same boat.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Ryan will program me in an RPE 8 for a set, and I'll send it to him, and he's like, dude, that's not an RPE 8. Take a little bit off of that, because it's everybody, all three of us, we're going to push it as hard as we can. We're going to push it 10% farther. And that's the mentality you need, I think, to be successful in any kind of strength sport. But there's also the longevity factor and a coach's responsibility to be like, hey, like you're doing too much. That's going to be great for the short term, but we're looking at long-term successes here. So let's be a little more reasonable in how hard we're pushing it.
I love that approach, especially, I mean, in both sports too. Like I know in powerlifting, I have quite a few powerlifting friends who talk about how hard it is on your body just lifting all the heavy weights. And so you have to look at it from that perspective. In bodybuilding, in a very similar way, like dieting down for so long, chronic under eating, overtraining, doing all this cardio, like eventually you have to look at it like, well, are you going to be competing for 10 years? Like a lot of people, they don't want to just do one show and then, and like people say, oh, well, I want to get my pro card. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to get your pro card and stop competing? Like, so you have to think about it from like a longevity perspective. So I think that's really smart. I did want to ask you, so your bicep injury, that was different than what you did when you were playing with your dog, right? Those were two different injuries.
Yeah, and all these injuries happen outside the gym. It's never like,
isn't that funny? I swear I only get injured doing just the most random shit.
Yeah, I think it's like, when you're lifting, you're focused on your form and your positioning, and it is really hard unless you take an unreasonable jump in weight. It's really hard to hurt yourself if you're lifting correctly. The only gym injury I've ever suffered was I was putting on my knee sleeve, and the knee sleeve was so tight that I lost my grip and I slipped and I pulled something in my back. But yeah, the bicep was actually a hockey injury. It was brutal. Like when it happened, I heard it, and my first thought was that I dislocated my shoulder because it was like a pop. And then I realized, like, no, that's definitely not my shoulder. But it never happens in the gym. I mean, people get injured in the gym, but it's a lot less dangerous there than people really think.
Yeah, great points.
Do you think if you ate meat, you'd get injured less often?
I just it would immediately solve all my problems. Yeah.
No,
oh my
sorry,
gosh,
I had to ask because I know there's going to
how's
be
it going?
comments like that.
Oh, there always is. Yeah, I mean, no matter what you do, like meat would solve the problem, or you'd be even stronger, or
Yeah.
it's always the
How much could
solution,
you
right?
bench if you ate a steak?
Yeah, imagine how strong this guy would be if he ate meat. Like, okay, well, yeah.
Maybe 700-pound squat. Yeah. So what would you say overcoming your injury? What kind of mindset would someone need to overcome something like that and have that resiliency to persevere and get to the other side of it?
I find it's really helpful to be motivated almost entirely out of spite, and like that's actually 90% of the reason that I'm a vegan athlete is that I was told at some point that I couldn't do it or that people couldn't do it. And I thought, that's so dumb that I'm just going to do it. And, here I am 10 years into doing that, and entirely out of spite and being told that it couldn't happen. And so, the same thing with my injury was I got down on it. I thought I can't train, because thinking about everything, deadlift, it's just your arm, but deadlift, getting your arms under a barbell for a squat, I'm like, I can't do anything. And as soon as my coach said that, like, you're just looking for an excuse, I thought, no, hell no. And so that spite and that stubbornness, I mean, that's really where it came from. Is like you just have to be unwilling to quit and unwilling to accept the fact that there's something you can't do. And that's really where it comes from. Is just being stubborn and refusing to be told that there's something you can't do.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. That's really my first bodybuilding prep. That's what fueled me through it. And I suffered a lot. My calories got really low. I was doing tons of cardio, but it was that spite. Like, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. I'm going to show everybody.
Right.
Such a powerful motivator.
Yeah, it really is.
If you want somebody to do something, tell them they can't do it.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Let me ask, why powerlifting? Why didn't you go to bodybuilding? Why didn't you go to Olympic weightlifting? Like, what about the squat, the bench, and the deadlift were so alluring that you went that route?
So I got into, like, I had my kid, and at that point I was not exercising at all outside of like playing hockey once a week. I wasn't exercising. I was not vegan. I was drinking heavily, and all of a sudden you have this child and you're like, I need to live longer than the trajectory of my current behaviors is going to allow. Right. And so, at that point, I quit drinking, and I realized I need to make a change to my diet, which is a little bit ironic because I still eat like shit just as a vegan. But, and I started exercising, and the first thing I did was, obviously you think, okay, I got to get in shape. You're going to run. That's everybody's like first thought is like being in shape equals running. And so I started running, and I'm like, this sucks. There's got to be a way to make running fun. And so I started doing OCR races, Tough Mudder, things like that. And so, those are obstacle courses. In addition to the running, there's some upper body strength required and things like that. So I got really into that for a bit, and I started considering doing Tough Mudder has the world's toughest mudder, which is a 24-hour race where you just run for 24 hours. And so I started following a training program for that, and it incorporated bench, squat, and deadlift. And the more I did that, the more I thought, man, squat, bench, and deadlift is a lot of fun, and running is not. And so that just led to me only doing those things. And for me, the biggest thing was, getting in shape. It's so subjective. It's really hard to look at yourself and really think that you're making any progress. The number on the scale doesn't help you feel any better. Because obviously as you're gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time, that number is not going to change the way that you're expecting it to. There's so much misinformation and misguided expectations in the fitness industry. And I was having a hard time. I would go to the gym for a few weeks, not see the progress that, I was led to believe would happen immediately. And I would quit. And when I got into powerlifting, I'm logging these numbers and I'm seeing, hey, like, there's no arguing that these numbers are going up. I'm making tangible progress. I can see that. I can't talk myself out of it because I have these numbers written down. And that's what really got me into powerlifting, is that, like, it's very self-motivating. I can see the progress I'm making. I'm enjoying it. And then long term, I'm enjoying, the changes it's making in the body, for example. But, as far as why I didn't get into Oli lifting, I'm not smart enough. I'm not coordinated enough. I mean, there's Oli lifters at our gym, and I watch them, and then, I have a hard time even like with the amount of cues that are involved in the deadlift, and it's why I don't sumo deadlift, because I cannot think about that many things at the same time. I need to just stand up with the weight, right? That's as much as I can think about. And so Oli lifting is so technical and so complicated, and it's nothing but respect for Olympic lifters, but I can't do it. Bodybuilding, I can't eat enough, so it really all led to powerlifting. Like, here's a sport where, I do, for the most part, I do sets of lower reps. You want to eat as much as you can and rest as much as you can. It all came together. This is like the perfect sport for me.
I love it. I love it. And you're doing really well at it, man. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you've set some state records in California?
Yeah, so USPA, they have a submaster, which is 35 to 40 year group. So in 2019, actually, that meet that I hurt my back and had a subpar performance, I still managed to set 4 state records in that meet for the drug tested submaster. Those have been broken since. It's been 5 years, so that's what you want to see, is those numbers get pushed up and up and up. But I held 4 California state records in that. USAPL doesn't have a submaster, so I'm still competing against people that are 18 through 40, which is challenging. But a couple of years, I'll hit their masters age group. And as we talk about longevity, what highlights the lack of longevity of the sport to me is that you watch how significantly the records and qualifying totals drop for an athlete that's 40 compared to an athlete that's 35. And I do think that like proper guidance and coaching is so critical, because you see people just burn out and not make it in the sport until the age of 40, which is wild to me. This is something you should be able to do into your 70s and 80s. There's no reason not to. So I'm looking forward to that. My big goal would be to make and compete at the IPF Worlds in the masters category. So I got a lot of work to do to get there, get on a national team and that kind of thing. But that's my goal for the next 4 years.
Incredible. You can do it.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's complicated because you have to be a representative for your country. But I look at the qualifying and competitive totals for that age group, and I think it's feasible.
Yeah. So did powerlifting come before veganism for you, or did veganism come first?
I went vegan just a few months into powerlifting. Yeah, so they all that kind of that catalyst of having a child, kind of everything changed pretty quickly in that time period. So I started exercising, and then I went vegan, and then I quit drinking shortly after that. So all within 2 years of this all stuff just happened, and it started with just I stopped eating beef. There's a number of factors that went into it. At the time we were doing bully breed rescue. So we were like fostering and rehabilitating and rehoming, pit bulls and American bulldogs. And, I noticed that we had this one dog that just it reminded me of a cow, his mannerism and the way he looked and the way he moved. He reminded me of a cow. And I remember sitting there one time and I'm like, I'm spending my time and energy and resources helping these dogs. And then I'm coming home and I'm eating another animal. Right. And that just kind of clicked for me. And at that point I was like, I can't eat beef anymore. And then as you follow that down the line logically, it's like, well, how come I can eat beef and I can't eat beef, but I can eat pigs and chickens and fish? And over the course of about a year, I just slowly cut out one animal at a time. And, I ended with just my last tub of whey protein. That was the last thing I had. And once that was gone, I was like, that's it. I'm not buying animal products anymore. And that was 10 years ago.
That's incredible,
Awesome.
dude. Not many people come to this decision mostly on their own. Like I had somebody reach out and kind of not pressure me, but bring it into the front of my consciousness. So I think from an advocacy standpoint, your journey is one that's good to share, because so many people do love dogs and cats. Like
Yeah.
truly love these, like love them more than I love some people. And if they can love a dog just like you, they could love a cow, they could love any other animal. So encouraging people through that way, like leading by example, I think does better than telling people what they're doing wrong. So
Yeah, and I had, my partner at the time, she'd vegan since like 2004, and never pushed me on it. But as all these things are happening in my head at the same time, and people are saying you can't, be strong on a vegan diet, she was running marathons, and I'm like, this person's been vegan for, you know, a long time at this point. She's able to run full marathons. I know how strenuous that is because I can barely run a mile, and so if that's possible, then this has to be possible too. And it all kind of came together at the right time for me to make that decision and do it, for the love of animals and out of spite and all this at the same time. So it was good timing.
Amazing. And another common argument against vegans I see all the time on social media is a lot of people will say, oh, well, you built all of that before you were vegan,
Yeah.
and then you just transitioned, but you
Right.
transitioned really just months into your entire health journey. So you built all of your strength on a vegan diet.
Yeah, it's something I am proud of because I find that's hugely helpful for this argument because yeah, you see that all the time is, oh, he built his base on animal products and just was able to like somehow protein lasts in your body for 5 years or whatever. I don't know what the logic is behind that, but I see that all the time. And so, being able to say, listen, like I was deadlifting 225 when I started, and completely without the use of any animal products, you know, moving that to 675, 700 pounds, like how else can you explain that? And they'll find a way. The goalpost will always move, but the more that you can hold that up in front of people and say that's not the case because look what I've done entirely off of animal products is helpful.
Yeah.
What is your favorite vegan junk food? Because you eat a lot of it.
Man. So like junk food, because like a lot of people will consider like comfort food junk food. Like if I'm eating a hamburger, they'll call that junk food. I don't really call that junk food, you know. When I talk about junk food, it's like when I eat 3 racks of Oreos and like the Doritos, that purple bag of Doritos, like that's the junk food. You know, there's no silver lining to eating that, right? It's purely just because it tastes good. Like a Beyond Burger's got protein, right? Like I can lean on that. I can say, listen, I'm eating this because they have the protein content. Um, but junk food, yeah, I mean, it's got to be Oreos. Those hold it down for me for a long time.
Okay. I appreciate the honesty. I live vicariously through you. I love your food posts, so please don't stop. We have not followed the script at all. Would we like to do the question game?
Oh my gosh.
40,
Yeah, we can do
40
the
minutes
question
in.
game. Here we go. 40 minutes in. Sure. All right, we got our shaker cup. A bunch of just random questions. Let's see what we got today. Okay, you guys ready?
Ready.
What's the best Christmas gift you've ever received? It's a tough one. Gotta really think about it.
Oh man. That's a great question. I'm like going back through all the years trying to piece stuff together.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's like 8-year-old Christmas where you got like a Super Nintendo. Like, how can you
Yeah.
match that feeling, right? That's tough.
I was literally thinking I was like 6 and I got a PlayStation 1 and it had like Mega Man and I don't even remember what else. Spyro. Oh yeah,
Oh my
Spyro.
Oh
god, I
yeah,
loved Spyro, but I had a GameCube. Do you guys remember GameCube?
yeah, GameCube.
That's what I had.
That might be
Yeah, I
it
think
for me.
that's got to be it. I don't think anything matches like that Christmas morning, 8 years old, like Super Nintendo. Yeah, you can't match that. Like it doesn't matter. That's never gonna be beat.
It's magical when
No.
you're a kid and you still believe
Yeah.
in Santa and like you wake up and all the toys are there. It's so different.
Now I'm thinking like, dang, mom and dad got screwed by this Santa guy because like I liked his presents more.
I was never allowed to believe in Santa.
No?
No
The
way.
yeah, the church that we were raised in, they compared it to like a false idol. So they told the parents, don't tell your kids that Santa's real kind of thing. So Santa was never a thing for me. So they got all the
Well,
credit.
or at least you
That
didn't
doesn't
have to
sound
go
very
through.
fun.
Yeah, you didn't have to go through the 1 year of like total utter disappointment though when you learned Santa's not real and
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
soul crushing.
Yeah.
Well, if you dye that beard white, you could go be Santa.
My granddad, when he had a white beard and he would go like he was like Navy his entire life, curmudgeon, grumpiest guy he's ever met, and he was secretly playing Santa at the mall for like the last 10 years of his life. He didn't tell anybody because he didn't want anybody to think he was like soft or whatever. So I
Oh
might do the
my
same thing.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
That is funny. Speaking of soft, I feel like there's some. Well, there's like, my brain's going in like 5 different directions right now. I was gonna say like being vegan, you usually are thought of as like softer or weaker, but then as a man, you were expected to be so hard and strong. I feel like you kind of toe that line between being usually the strongest person in the room, but also you do seem to, at least from the interactions I've had with you, have a bit of a softer side.
Oh yeah.
Um, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but yeah, I think like we can be both. We can kind of dabble in both when it's needed.
Yeah, I think that, for a long time there's been this misconception that, masculinity requires sort of turning off any empathy. Um, and I think it's completely misguided, and the entire concept of masculinity, I think, is so far gone at this point and focused on the wrong things. I mean, you go on social media and you look at these like masculinity influencers, and they're all talking about alpha this, and you know, it's I don't think that most people can really adequately describe masculinity at this point without just kind of talking about being an asshole to everybody around them, right? When to me, it's things like, you know, being a good father, being a good, a good and present father. And that requires so much empathy. You know, you have to raise a child to like with empathy, and you can't just be hard on on everybody around you. And I think that it's going off the wrong path of like masculinity it requires being tough, which means being a jerk to everybody. And I think that it's hard to watch, and I think a lot of it comes from like we talked about earlier. A lot of it comes from insecurity. People, they feel small, or they feel powerless, and so they turn that into just you know being putting everybody around them down or being mean to, and then just blocking any kind of emotion or empathy in their own heart, which is the wrong path, I think. And so you see this tied into veganism, obviously, because showing empathy to animals or anything defenseless is seen as a weakness, um, which is crazy to me. Because I think it takes a lot of strength to speak out against that, and come out as someone who's willing to defend uh, animals or anybody that's not able to defend themselves. And it's hard to watch, and it's I think it's really unfortunate.
Mm. I think that you made a really good distinction between like toxic masculinity
Sure.
and masculinity. Like
Yeah.
they're two totally different things, but you're right. It's like almost like a controversial statement now. Like if you're masculine, you're just an asshole, and you use people, and you want to like take away people's rights and whatever people assume. But I totally agree. I feel like being masculine is being a good father, it's being a provider, it's being the protector, like all of the things that we associate with being a strong man, but they're doing it for the right reasons. Like you're protecting animals, you're protecting your family, you're protecting the people you love, you're providing for those people so that they can have a better life. Like that's truly what masculinity is. It's not about oppressing people. So exactly like you said, I feel like veganism is one of the most masculine things that a guy could do. You're standing up for other people's rights and being a voice for the voiceless.
Yeah, I think that a big misstep in all of this is that, modern masculinity is almost entirely focused on what another guy thinks about you. And like, instead of what I think masculinity is, which is like following your own path and being true to yourself, regardless of what that looks like, people are basing their entire identity and personality around like, well, if I show any weakness, what is this guy who I see as masculine? What is he going to think of me? And that you're limiting your own possibilities, and you're limiting your own self and your own happiness just to make a person who doesn't give a shit about you, what do they think of you? And that's obviously, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think small takeaway there, like doing things just for other people's approval or for society in general, usually not the right step.
Yeah.
It is hard to be true to yourself, to stand out, to be different, because you get so much pushback.
Yeah. Yeah,
My
It's
it's
brain.
sad though.
so much easier just to follow what everybody else is telling you, what you need to do, what you need to focus on, what you need to think. And yeah, absolutely.
It is easier. Like I was actually talking about this with a friend the other day about how many people they don't stay true to themselves and they just kind of follow like the group think and do what everybody else is doing. And it's so sad that so many people don't live a life that's true to themselves. And I actually remember reading a few weeks ago, it was like the top 8 regrets of the dying or something like that. And like almost all of them could kind of fall under that umbrella. And one of the biggest ones was people not expressing themselves, not saying how they felt when they felt it, like holding back to make other people happy or to, like just have an easier life. And it's amazing how many people regretted not living a life that was true to themselves, following a career. Like another one was, oh, I did what my dad wanted me to do. I didn't do what I wanted to do. I lived my dad's dream. And it's crazy because like so many people, they let their life go by and they don't even realize it. Like they just wake up and like you get one shot here. Like we were talking about the Nintendo game. I think we said this on a podcast before. Eminem, it said, was it Eminem? Life ain't no Nintendo game or something. Like you get one shot, so you got to make the most of it. And I can't. It's just crazy to me that people live a life that they're not true to themselves, and you only get one.
Yeah, it's got to be terrible to reach the end of that timeline and look back and think, well, these are all things I could have done, but I was afraid of, the reaction of people around me,
Very much
I think
so.
being vegan helped prepare me for being a bodybuilder because, like, I got so much ridicule for being vegan that now I just don't even almost care if I walk around in posing trunks, even at an event or something. Like, I have no shame anymore. And it's almost
That's
because, like,
funny. Because
I
like,
just
yeah,
don't.
we were at Plant Built the first time, and Giacomo and Danny get like a huge hotel room at the top, so the whole team can come in. We can do meetings in there, and I'm there, and it's like 8 a.m, and Giacomo comes out in like a green sequined speedo, and just no reaction. Like it's just like a normal day for him, and I'm like, oh wow, that's awesome. Like I love that. I could never do that, but I love that.
Yeah. Also, too, if you're by that time and prep, like I was driving to my show and I had to stop every 2 hours to send my coach photos, and like I'm literally there with my mom in a gas station in my underwear with a tripod taking a video of myself. I can only imagine what people thought that didn't know about bodybuilding.
Right.
But at that point, I was like, I don't care. I
Yeah.
do not care what you think. I have a goal, and ain't nobody or nothing gonna stop me from getting there. I'm not gonna be mean to anybody, but I'm also gonna be walking around in my underwear at a gas station. Let's tie that back into something. I don't know how, but shooting.
I was gonna ask if you received any pushback from the people in your life when you went vegan.
Yes and no. Quitting drinking was a bigger one. Of course, there was always like comments about going vegan, and you know, the masculinity thing definitely came into that. But I know that even before I was lifting a lot, I know that I come off as kind of intimidating, which is ironic because I'm like gentle as shit. But I think people are a little bit more hesitant to say things to me than they might be to anybody else. So the biggest thing is comes up is like I remember my first or second, it was my second powerlifting meet, and I don't I am a little hesitant, especially at meets, to like advertise that I'm vegan before I accomplish something, because in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm gonna rock up with like vegan shirt, and everyone's gonna know I'm gonna vegan, and then like I'm gonna just completely bomb out at this meet, right? And everyone's gonna be like, see, like that guy is a vegan, he came to a powerlifting meet and he messed the whole thing up. Like, so I usually like pack a vegan shirt in my bag when I know that I've placed, I'll go change so that when I hit the podium, that's when I put it on. And that kind of like throws people off. The first time I did it, someone thought I was joking. They thought that it was like a prank that I was playing, that I was pretending to be vegan. But when I did IPL Worlds in Ireland, I did the same thing, and I came out, and the guy who placed second, he was on the podium, and he sees me come out with a vegan shirt, and he goes, "I got beat by a fucking vegan," and it was like the best, my favorite reaction of all time at a meet. So, there's definitely different takes on that.
Well, even with a head tattoo, I've had people ask me if I'm seriously vegan. So I can't hide it anymore. It actually made me want to compete again. Like,
Yeah.
it's extra pressure, man. Like, I truly think we have an advantage. Like, okay, people want to argue that there's reasons why vegans have a disadvantage nutritionally, but I think mentally, there's no doubt an advantage. If I wasn't vegan, I wouldn't train as hard. I know that for a fact.
Yeah. It's definitely a motivating factor. Like there's like a weight on your shoulders, right? To be that example and to like I don't not be mediocre, not be the middle of the pack. Like there's a responsibility there, to rise to the top and that definitely pushes even harder. Like I can't even tell me how many times like I've been training and I'm like just wiped out. I'm like, I can't do this. Like I'm gonna call this one short. And then that thought enters my mind, like, and it's just a little bit extra push to put in a little bit extra work, which I love that.
Yeah. I have it tattooed on my forearm here. That was my first tattoo ever. So
Nice.
in prep, there'd be a lot of days where I was just tired, and I would look at that and I'd be like, well, how are you going to feel if you don't do your best and you have less of an impact and more animals die because you're not asking a little bit more from yourself? Like, is there anything
Right.
else you could give? I also think, we're not, you and anybody, the three of us here, me, Brooke, and you, we're not mediocre. We're not average. There are eyes on us. There is a bit of extra pressure. And I think, especially Nick, you and I, if we walk around, we can't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody sees us yell at someone or lose our temper or flick somebody off in traffic, well, now we've just painted the thing that we care the most about in a very negative light.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know where I was going with this.
Two brain farts today. Well, we did
I
want to
know.
ask you what it's like being a vegan dad. Is your daughter vegan?
Yeah, so I went vegan when she was 1,
Oh,
and she's been vegan since birth. And so my
wow.
favorite thing that she does is she pulls that card on me all the time, that she's been vegan longer than me. She she calls herself the true vegan, because she's never eaten an animal product, and she loves to hold that over my head whenever I say anything. So I love that. Yeah, she's been vegan since birth. Obviously, can be a controversial topic. I get comments all the time online about how like I should be reported to CPS and stuff. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Like, please go. You see this kid's life. Like, please call CPS and see what they say. Like, man. But we had conversations, obviously, during the pregnancy, with her pediatrician after she was born. Every very closely watched every check in. Every height and weight check in, and there's never been an issue. She's turning 11 this month, and she never had to be on antibiotics for any reason, which I don't want to tie into it's because she's vegan, but she's had an extremely healthy childhood without any issues. So yeah, it's awesome. There's been some times like, so obviously we raised her vegan. When she started to reach an age where she can ask why and question about it, we gave her all the information. There's a farm sanctuary in Acton, California, and we took her and we skipped the portion where it does like the factory farming. We're not trying to like fully brainwash her at this point. We just wanted her to meet some animals, and so that you go and you meet the cows and the pigs and create that bond and have a full understanding of like you you are reaching an age where you can make this decision for yourself. If you want to start eating animal products, that's on you. We want you to have this connection, understand where that's coming from, because we're seeing her schoolwork where they start immediately talking about eating milk for strong bones and this stuff, and there's no explanation of where that comes from or the process that goes into that. So we wanted to show her, make that connection, like understand these are living animals that you'd be impacting with that decision. It's come up a couple times. We've had conversations. We've never told her you need to be vegan or we're not going to allow it, but she of course has questions, just as anybody would, and she's stuck with it. So she's fully into it now, and like I said, likes to hold it over my head at this point.
That's awesome that she can joke about it with you.
Yeah.
I also think it's so ridiculous that I have no doubt that people judge you for raising your child vegan. Yet, how many people go around and judge people that have overweight children or kids that are like 200 pounds in 6th grade? Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, eating
There's
a
Yeah, it's because like every once in a while there'll be a news story, and it'll be like parents, raise their child vegan. The child died of malnutrition, and that's of course the headline because that's how headlines work. It's clickbait, and then you get into the article and it's like they were giving the kid almond milk instead of breast milk or formula, or it's some extreme diet that isn't veganism. Yeah, there's no animal products involved, but it has nothing to do with veganism. But people see that, they read the headline, they don't read any further into it, and so they put that in their head that that's what happens when you raise your kid vegan. And no matter how many times, like the American Association of Pediatrics saying that a well-planned vegan diet can be healthy for all stages of life, they've already made up their mind that like it's a death sentence if you try to raise your child vegan, and they get really passionate about it.
Yeah, the misinformation is just unreal. Of course, where do you get your protein? But conversely, where do you get your heart attacks? Where do you get your cancer? Where do you get your diabetes? Like,
Right,
let's look at the epidemic that's facing our nation. Also, where do you get your pandemics from? Because ain't no pandemic ever been caused by tofu or plant-based foods.
right.
So it drives me nuts that we can't see how this is directly impacting our own species, even if we don't care about other species. But I I think continuing to speak here a lot. Your viewpoint of showing her this is an animal. It's kind of your choice. It speaks to like a post I saw the other day. It's like we're all born vegan. We have to be taught violence. We have to be taught to kill something else to eat it. None of us like come out just like ready to go slit a cow's throat and eat it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a deliberate and intentional gap to of raising a kid or raising a child to just normalize eating animal products without having any insight or understanding into how they get. I mean, how many times like you see a video of a kid online putting together that a chicken nugget comes from a chicken the animal, right? We've seen that. I've seen that like 5 or 6 times. There's videos online, and that's intentional. And it's because you can program a human being at that age, and by the time that they have the ability to question it, it's a cognitive dissonance where it makes them uncomfortable, but they're already set in their ways, and they're gonna do whatever they can subconsciously to avoid connecting those two. And it's just, I mean, you see that every in schools. Like my daughter was at a school and they were gonna bring a dairy cow out and talk to the kids and show them like this is where you get your protein and your calcium from and all this kind of stuff, and it's like it's intentional. You don't want kids to know that that what goes into factory farming or what goes into these things, because by nature humans are empathetic, and kids seeing that is going to make that connection, and they do everything they can to avoid that. All the packaging, every cartoon, whatever they can do to avoid making that connection, they will.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was in What the Health or maybe a book I read somewhere, but I feel like I remember reading that like the dairy industry is just so like in bed with our public schools and our government and the USDA and all of these organizations. Like they're all kind of like mutually benefiting from each other. So like the schools, I believe it's something about subsidies, like
Yeah.
the milk, and like that's why like it never really made sense to me why they always gave us milk in school. Like I mean, I know they said healthy strong bones, but it's like why not give out water? Like it's calorie free, you're just pumping kids with a ton of calories and fat. But it's like these industries, there's just so much corruption between big food, big agriculture, and our government, and big pharma. There's just like this huge triangle between all of them. And so I think the unfortunate part for children being in schools is like they don't really know any better. And I mean, really no one does until you, like all three of us have done, pursued the information ourselves, but nobody is coming to you with this information and teaching you about this stuff.
Yeah, and it's intentional as kids, because kids will believe what you tell them. I mean, you look at anything, any belief system, is much easier to sell to a child than an adult. If you come to an adult with anything and explain to them things that people believe their whole life, they would have questions, they would push back, it wouldn't make sense to them. But a kid will believe anything you tell them, and that's definitely intentional. And like you said, there's a huge amount of subsidies, the government propping up animal agriculture and vice versa, that they need that to continue, and that they're putting millions of dollars into making sure that it does.
Yeah. So how has she approached like hanging out with her friends or like sleepovers, mixing with other kids who don't necessarily eat the way she does?
Yeah, it's been a issue a couple of times. Like, she'll go to a birthday party and have a cake, and she can't eat the cake, but we try to make accommodations for that. Like, we'll go grab some vegan cupcakes and send them with her so she can enjoy that part of the party. And conversations with the parents. Now that she can advocate for herself now, she has a really good understanding of what she can and can't eat. She knows how to scan an ingredient label pretty efficiently, and it's a lot easier now. Obviously, going out to eat, she can find something pretty much anywhere. So she there's been some pain points, but not as bad as you would think. Just some easy planning, and it kind of avoids all those issues.
Yeah, I was just talking with one of our business academy clients yesterday, and she has two kids and well, three kids, and they're all vegan. And she was saying something very similar, like she'll just pack snacks
Yeah.
for kids to take to play dates, and then it also kind of opens up conversations with other parents and the other kids, and the kids will like her kids' snacks, so they're kind of turned on to more vegan options. So in a way, it's kind of enlightening other people on your lifestyle. And I'm sure some people are more accommodating than others. Like she was saying that a lot of times the parents would say, hey, it's not on you, like let us buy something. Your kids are coming to our house, so let us purchase whatever they need. And I'm sure some people can be really understanding, and then some other people, they might need a whole lot of education because they just don't get it. But yeah, and I do feel like in California, I do feel like the West Coast, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I do feel like people are a little bit more health conscious, a little bit more vegan friendly over there, right?
Yeah, it depends where you are. I mean, realistically, I mean, we're at the north end of the Central Valley, the heart of agriculture here in California. And most people don't know this, but California is the second largest producer of dairy in the country,
Mm.
after, of course, Wisconsin. Huge amount of dairy and beef farms here. So it's back and forth depending on where you are. Obviously, if you're in San Francisco, Los Angeles, it's a little bit different. It's a pretty good blend here in Sacramento. But back to what you're saying, it is eye-opening, because a lot of people, like, they really don't understand what veganism is. They're kind of picturing that we're just eating, baby carrots all day, and they are surprised to find out that half the snacks in their cabinet are actually vegan. And it does kind of help them open their eyes a little bit to how available these things are, and it's not
Yeah,
as restrictive as they may have thought.
like the Oreos. I mean, who doesn't
Like
like
the Oreos,
I saw
lifesaver.
for April 1st an Instagram post, and they're like, vegans around the world are upset because Oreos are no longer vegan. I was like, no, even though
I
I don't even
saw
eat them.
that.
Um,
I was like, how
what
dare
I
they? They turned their back on the people who made them successful. How dare they?
what I think is cool here, Nick, is you are in yourself changing the world, and through your daughter, because I know this. I know that in our lifetime, we're not going to convince the world to go vegan. That's just not going to happen. I think maybe we could get rid of factory farming if we all work really hard, or at least put a dent in it. But the longer play is to change people's perceptions.
Yeah.
And so I know in my own family, like I have cousins that I have no doubt now when they hear the word vegan, they think of me instead
Mhm.
of some malnourished person or some angry person or something like that. And so same with you, but now that even extends to your daughter.
Yeah.
It's you know, if you found some vegan private school and hid her away in there around a bunch of other vegans, it maybe in some ways make her life easier, but it wouldn't change the world. It wouldn't allow all these people. So like even an event that I was thinking about going to, it's not a vegan event. And or the last event this weekend, I got to speak. I got a chance to speak, but there was a an Orlando Magic game playing. And so there were a ton of fans out there. And I was like, you know, on the one hand, this is a negative because most of these people probably don't want to hear a vegan guy on stage speaking. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people that might be able to have their minds changed. The next time they think about vegans, they don't think about some preachy jerk. I basically just kind of gave some of my story and tried to find some connectivity there. Anyways, I just think it's awesome that you're doing that with your daughter. It's another form of advocacy. I got a vasectomy at 25, so I was pretty sure I wasn't going to have biological kids, barring some crazy accident. But I think we're going to run into a whole nother generation of kids that are lifelong vegans. Like that's pretty cool. Did you intentionally, I guess, were you always wanting kids? Is that something that you always knew you wanted, or it just kind of happened? How did that come about?
No, I've known that I've always wanted a kid. You know, my partner at the time, we were together for like 17 years, so you know, it's always something that we talked about. You know, so yeah, it was definitely intentional. You know, and wanting to have and raise a kid. But yeah, like you say, like a lot of people talk about like what is and isn't activism, and I think that you know anybody in our role or even you know Stella's role being a vegan kid, I mean just showing the normalcy of a vegan lifestyle is advocacy in itself, because like you said there is that, and it's a perception that I have to admit I sometimes carry with me to this day, of what the average vegan looks like or acts like or talks like, and kind of reframing that by just being like a normal person, I think in itself is advocacy, because you know yeah we do need the extremes, you know we do need the people that are out there that are protesting, that are you know shutting down stores. I think that there's no bad form of advocacy, whether I think that they're all equally as effective. You know, I personally think that just setting the example of being like a normal athlete, normal person as a vegan is a huge form of advocacy in and of itself. You know, because it if you can reframe what their mental image of a vegan is, I think that's a huge step towards making this a more attainable or attractive lifestyle.
Yeah. So
Totally agree.
when does Stella's powerlifting training begin?
I tried to get her into hockey. I tried to get her into powerlifting. You know, she'll play with a kettlebell, you know, out in the gym once in a while, but so far I haven't been successful in getting her into powerlifting, but I'll keep trying. She does volleyball and soccer, so that's fine.
Oh, those are good ones too, though. Look, she's doing
Yeah,
something.
right.
Maybe she'll be like an all-star vegan volleyball or soccer player. That would be
Yeah, there you go.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's good that she's
College
doing it. Huh?
scholarships, college
That's what I
scholarships.
said. I said soccer goalies. There's a huge scholarship for soccer goalies. Like let's do that.
It's good that she's following her own path though too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're proud of her for that.
100%. Yeah.
So I have to ask, just because I'm sure. So I get a ton of pushback from the vegan community for using PEDs. Like
Mhm.
it's almost like I'm not in the vegan community. I'm not vegan because I use PEDs, and then I go over to the bodybuilding community, and they're like, "You're not a bodybuilder because you're not eating meat." I'm like, I don't fit in anywhere. You have to. I have no doubt that you get some pushback that you go shooting, that you own guns. There
I
has
get
to be.
pushback. I get pushback for a number of things. Um, my diet, because so many people came into veganism from the health aspect of it. So for example, 2018, 2019, I got invited to speak at the Veg Fest here in Sacramento. And they had an athletes panel, right? And the athletes were a triathlete, a distance runner, ultra marathoner, and me, right? And so questions are coming in. We're talking. They're all talking about their kale smoothies and their, you know, 100% raw, whole food, plant-based diet. And I'm sitting there like an asshole just talking about how many Beyond Burgers I'm eating every day. And, long story short, I wasn't invited back. That was my one and only Veg Fest appearance, because I get a lot of pushback for that, is that, it's supposed to be health focused. And I'm not health focused. And it's ironic because like healthiest I've ever been, just by virtue of what's in, the fake meat compared to eating animal flesh every day. Um, uh, but it definitely get pushback there. There is a pushback for the fact that that I am into firearms and shooting. There's definitely different sects of veganism that don't always see eye to eye. There's a huge but there are a lot of us. I mean, there's a lot of people, especially in like the vegan straight edge area, that are very into shooting and stuff like that. So it hasn't been as big of a pushback as I thought. I got a few comments, the first couple times I posted about it, and I can't follow you, this and that. But it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
That's so dumb. Here's the thing though, like you may not be having kale smoothies, but like honestly, I feel like your diet would be more relatable and more appealing to someone who is like on the verge of transitioning. Like I really, I kind of want to go vegan, but like at the same time, I love my burgers and I love
Right.
pizza and I love this, but like I don't like. There's so many people, like me included. Like I am very health focused, but I'm not ever gonna do raw vegan. Like you will catch me dead before you see me doing raw vegan. So it's like at the same time, like we still need those people. So I feel like yes, have your marathoners, your triathletes who are killing it and eating raw vegan, maybe that will appeal to somebody, but to have you on the panel and you're kind of like the polar opposite, like, hey, I just eat like a normal guy, like I just eat vegan, like I still eat all the guy food and enjoy the junk food, and but I'm just vegan. I think that's important for our movement.
I thought that was crazy, and that's something that I talked to them about, is that what's the downside to showing how many different ways you can do this, right? Like, why do we want to silo everybody into thinking that you can only eat a certain way? Because when I talk to people, I mean, that's a huge talking point. They're like, "What do you like? What do you eat? Like, how you're vegan, you're big. What do you eat?" I'm like, "Well, what do you eat?" I'm like, "Well, I eat like burgers and burritos and pizza." I'm like, "Me too. Cool, me too. That's what I eat too." And it just changed what's in there, and it's the same thing. And I didn't have to change what I'm eating. I just changed, from a beef patty to an impossible patty, and it goes a long way in people opening their eyes, because they think that that's the vegan diet, is just all fruits and vegetables all the time, some beans and, this kind of thing. But being able to go to people and saying, listen, yeah, you can do that. Absolutely. You can go to the whole food plant-based side. But there's not just one way to do this, and you don't have to make huge changes in what you're eating. And I didn't, and I still haven't.
Right. Because the person who is on the standard American diet, they're going to have so much more challenges. They're going to have a really hard time transitioning to the, kale smoothie, like acai bowl type of diet compared to what you're doing now. And like you said, I do think that's what's important about veganism is like people have this idea in their mind. Same thing with how we look, right? Like we're supposed to be this weak, frail, nutrient deficient vegan, and they think the same thing with our diet. It's iceberg lettuce, it's fruits, vegetables, but like every time I make one of those posts where it's like, here's what people think eating vegan is like, and it's just like lettuce and whatever, and then show all the foods that I've eaten over the years in like really cool restaurants, those posts always do amazing because people are still surprised that you can eat pizza, you can eat burgers, you can eat burritos, tofu, like scramble, you can make eggs. I mean, there's so many unlimited possibilities. So yeah, I'm really surprised. But the internet is a fun place. I get heat from whole food vegans. I mean, my
Oh yeah.
worst comments, my worst trolls are vegans.
Yeah, 100%. People talk about like, yeah, I would say that 90% of people that have me blocked on social media are vegans, just because we do not see eye to eye on how we're eating. But, one thing I think about a lot is that veganism and vegan messaging has been out for a long time. The veganism has been around for a while. If you look at how many people are vegan right now, I think you have to start to consider that the messaging hasn't been effective. Veganism should be an easy sell. And the fact that we're this far into it and we're still at 1 to 3% of the population being vegan, I think that means that we're not doing a good job of messaging it. And I think that, that idea, for example, someone saying I could never go vegan, and the standard response to that has been to just guilt them and berate them about what they're doing and the impact that it's having, which is true. They're not wrong, but that's not how you get people to change their mind. And I think like, I could never go vegan because I eat this way. And I'm like, well, yeah, I said the same thing. Look at what I'm eating now. It's the same thing that you're eating, right? Like, I think we need to change that messaging a little bit, because it just, we need to be more accommodating, and we need to be more encouraging rather than just berating people. I think a lot of people, their activism is almost entirely focused on making themselves feel better, and making themselves feel superior. Like, this is veganism is a trait that they have that makes them better than somebody else, and they hold that above other people. And I think that is historically has not been working, and we need to be more encouraging in this.
Yeah, there's a big difference between making someone feel like, well, you should be doing this because this is so much better than what you're doing and you should feel like shit about it,
Mhm.
versus like, look, I totally understand. I was in your shoes at one point too. I know exactly how you feel. But let me show you all the reasons that this is an awesome diet. This is an awesome lifestyle. It's so much different. And another misconception or stereotype with vegans is that we're on this like high horse, like self-aggrandizing journey of like trying to make everybody like our little minions,
Yeah.
and like it's again, I totally agree with you. We need to have a different approach. Well, some people, I think a lot of people are doing a great job. And I do feel like maybe in the past few years, it's changed quite a bit, especially with vegan athletes. I feel like that vegan athletes have done a really good job of advocating for veganism in a different way. But yeah, again, I feel like I said this on the podcast once before, but I once got invited to this event with a really great group. Like they do a lot of good stuff, but it just wasn't for me. Like they were in Atlanta, downtown Atlanta, like holding dead baby pigs, like real dead baby pigs, real, and covered themselves in blood and like were showing all these videos and stuff like that. And I just like didn't really want to be a part of it. Like one, because I want to hold a pig. Like that's disturbing. That's like kind of slightly traumatic to me. Makes me think of my dog, but I also just didn't want people to think that think of veganism in a negative light. I just didn't want to really be a part of it, so I declined. I ended up going to another event that was really cool. They bought some food from like some local vegan restaurants and they passed it around in Piedmont Park, which is like a huge kind of travel destination in Atlanta, if you will. And they would basically just ask people like, hey, what do you think about this? Like scale 1 to 10, and people would most of the time be like, this is great. Like I'd totally order this. I'd order 2 of these. I'd take this home. I'd be like, well, did you know it's vegan? And people were shocked. Like people were really, really impressed. So like again, everyone has their methods, everyone has reasons, but I do feel like you're making a really good point. We should be much further along than we are right now. And so what are we doing that needs a little bit of tweaking?
Yeah. And like I said, I don't think there's any bad form of activism. I personally think some forms of activism may have a more negative impact than a positive one. If you're talking about net balance on what people think of veganism, walking away from that, it may be effective for some people, and it is effective for some people. Some of us have come to veganism through those channels. I think if you show 100 people some of these forms of activism, more or less people are going to walk away with a uh, negative feeling about veganism than a positive one. You may change a couple minds, and that's great, but I think overall it may be negative. There was this one push a few years ago online, and I can never remember the name, but it was a pledge, liberation pledge might be it. And it was that if you're out and family, friends, anybody's eating animal products, then you'll leave. You'll refuse to eat with them. And I got a lot of pushback for saying that I didn't think that was the right idea, right? That it makes veganism look more extreme, and it isolates people from the people whose minds they could be changing. I don't think anybody in that situation would be like, this person won't come eat with us because they're vegan, we're eating animals, then we should stop eating animals. I don't see that happening. So, I think there's a lot of that where it may be a good in conceptually, but I don't think that the outcome of it or the perception of veganism is helped by it. And that has been, like I said, 90% of the people that have me blocked on social media are vegan. It's those things where we have a disagreement on what I think is good big picture for the progression of the vegan movement.
I agree. I think we need to be big picture focused, and when you do that, your activism, your forms might change, or your method might. I'm super excited for Robert Cheek's book, The Impactful Vegan, to come out. He was our first guest ever back in season 1. So hopefully by the time this is released, I know it's coming out soon. I think June. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like we might have forms of activism that push people away or push them further from where we should be. Anytime that you create like that elitist or exclusive or like, yeah, I guess excluding people, how are you going to bring them onto your side? How are you going to change their mind?
I
It's
see
not
them
going
like
to
push. You have things like Meatless Monday or Veganuary, and vegans pushing back against that because it's not enough. And it's like, on one hand, I get that. Like, I don't think that Meatless Monday should be the end goal. I don't think that being vegan for 1 month a year is the goal, or even veganism. But what is the downside to introducing people to this? What is the downside to letting people dip their toe in this and get started? Like, they not meeting your personal expectations of them, and so you're gonna just like get down on them and exclude them from all of this. It's wild to me. Like, I think that another controversial opinion that I have is that, like, if 100 people going vegetarian has a bigger impact than one person going vegan. And I think that the long-term goal obviously is for those 100 people to go vegan, but discouraging people from making any change. Like, if you look at the immediate impact to the animals, which is what this is all about, what's the quickest way we can have the biggest impact on the most number of animals? And that's to make this as appealing as possible and to get people to try these things and to reduce, their consumption of animal products. Obviously, veganism is the end goal, but we're not going to get there if we just force everybody into veganism day one and we don't accept any other outcome.
Yeah, 100%. I can identify with where the angry vegans come from. I think like
Sure.
at a heart level, I connect with them. It does upset me that we're choosing to still kill 80 billion animals a year plus. That's upsetting, but it is a game that we have to play to convince people to change their minds. And
I know where
if
it
we
comes
don't,
from. If
yeah,
you go online and you surround yourself, you embed yourself in slaughterhouse footage, you start to lose a little bit. When I first went vegan, it's exposed to so much of this footage, and so I get where that comes from. You see this stuff, and your blood is boiling, and you don't want to allow anything less than veganism. And I remember going to Sprouts, and they have a butcher's counter, and I started to just think terrible things about the people in line at the butcher's counter, and I thought, that's not healthy, that's not productive, that's not going to help anybody. And so I had to step away from that, and I found that to be, it's more effective when I talk about and communicate veganism now than when I came from it from a place of anger.
yeah. Also, I think the numbers might be wrong here, but I think you're correct. 1 to 3% of the population identifies as vegan. There's probably a lot of people that are close that just don't want to put that label on
Sure.
themselves. I know my mom is that way. She's like 99% vegan, but if she goes over to like an elder relative's house and they cooked macaroni and cheese because they know she doesn't eat meat, but they don't fully get the cheese side, like she might still eat that. So she doesn't want to label herself as vegan in case she has an event like that, but like she's almost there, like
Yeah.
financially and like as far as what her impact on the supply and demand is, she might as well be vegan, even just without the label. But what I'm seeing is that these alternative meats like Beyond and Impossible, the sales are driving not from vegans. It's there's not enough vegans to create a big enough demand. So like you said, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the vegetarian side of the analogy, but like if we get 100 people to be vegan 25% of the time, that's more than getting 20 people to outright go vegan.
Yeah.
It's still a bigger impact. So we gotta slowly shift, and I think just change people's minds on all sides. We got people like you showing that vegans can be strong. People like me, Brooke, showing people vegans can be big. The Impossible Meats saying vegan food can taste good. We got the kale smoothies showing vegans can be healthy. Once we paint all these positive brushstrokes, we can have this really beautiful painting of veganism and convince people to look at it a little bit more and take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you look at the most successful meat alternative brands. It doesn't say vegan anywhere on the label. You know, that's not their target audience, because it is a small portion of the population. And you know, I remember when Impossible first came out, they went into several restaurants that didn't have, you know, a vegan bun or, you know, vegan cheese, and people were livid. And I was thinking, you know, that's not the point, right? You know, they're not targeting you. They're targeting the people whose minds need to be changed, and that's a much bigger market. And obviously, for them, it's a money thing, but also from an activism standpoint, you know, that's where our focus should be: is that larger population of minds to change, rather than the people that are already doing 99% of it, like you said.
Yeah. Have you ever been to a Cinnaholic?
Yes.
Dude, that's like sneaky veganism. They had like a little sign this big behind the counter that says all products in here are vegan or plant-based. And I asked like 8 people when I went, because people were looking at me. They're like, "Are you vegan?" I was like, "Yeah, are you?" And they're like, "No, why?" I'm like, "Well, your cinnamon roll is." One dude was like, "What?" Like,
Yeah.
it actually upset him. And so I'm almost thinking like, you know, we can trick some people, like not being mean about it, but like
Yeah.
these
There's
people have
this
been going to.
there's this donut shop here in Sacramento, Family Donuts in Delhi. It's just a pink box donut shop with a little delicatessen counter. About 60% of their donuts are vegan. Nobody knows. Doesn't say vegan anywhere in the place. I heard from, you know, I went to a vegan meetup here, and I heard from someone that, oh yeah, these donuts, like, you go out and ask, and you go in, and one of the owners, they're vegan, and they're like, yeah, I just found a way to make these, like, it's like, you know, not the buttermilk bars, the old fashioned things like that, but most of the donuts are vegan. Nobody has any idea. They're in there. It's like a incredibly popular donut shop. Line out the door every single, you know, weekend morning, and nobody even knows. And I think that's, you know, that's fantastic. And as more people realize it, it blows their minds. You know, they had no idea that we ate vegan donuts this whole time.
That's so cool. I do that every holiday. I make everybody's favorites, but I make them vegan, and I've gotten some pushback for it over the years. Like everybody's like, "Oh, well, we're gonna bring our own lasagna," and we're like, "Okay," but the homemade one, the vegan one, is always better. I'm not even kidding. Like I would be honest with you guys, it's always better, and it always gets destroyed. No
Yeah.
leftovers.
Yeah, I love that. A grandfather in our family, and he was, you know, police chief. He was in the Marines. He was like just that type of guy, right? And his wife made Beyond sausages and didn't tell him, and he ate them, and he said they were really good. And then she told him what they were, and he threw the rest of the package away. And he like checks the fridge every time she goes to the store now, because he was so upset that he'd been duped, and it tasted just as good as what he expected from a regular sausage. But it's always a funny reaction from people.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I was asked, like, I forget where, somebody asked this question, like are certain foods tied to your masculinity or something? I'm like, I don't get it. Like, why are people so tied to meat for their masculinity? Because like on the flip side, if God announced, "Hey man, I'm sorry, but the soybean just ain't working anymore. We're not gonna ever have tofu again," I wouldn't be like, "Oh my God, like there's no tofu. Like I've lost my identity. I can't survive in this world. I'm gonna have to eat seitan, and this sucks." Like, I mean, I like tofu, especially when it's deep fried. But like, my identity's not tied to it. So I don't get that for other people, why they're, and even if it's not cultural, it's like some people are like, "Well, I just love hamburgers." Like, well, that's not your culture.
Yeah, there's a lot of advertising that goes into it. There's these you look at like all these carnivore dieters, big accounts on Twitter that are pushing it, and they're definitely more than subliminally connecting meat and masculinity. And there's a whole science behind it. I was just looking at an article the other day about it because it got brought up again with Ted Cruz and his bill to try and prevent lab-grown meat in Texas, and the comparisons he was drawing to real meat and masculinity. And it's there. I don't know if I fully understand why or why people make that connection. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's definitely prevalent. Is that there's that meat and masculinity go hand in hand. I think it just goes back to advertising it from protein, and it's like people make that connection subliminally, and they have a hard time letting go of it.
Luckily, there's no foods associated with femininity, so I think we're all good over here.
Chocolate though, maybe.
Maybe chocolate when you're PMSing. That is a pretty. That's one that's pretty common there.
Yeah. All right. Well, Nick, we're about at time here. This has been really cool. I didn't really know exactly what route we were going to go down, but I enjoyed this journey.
Yeah,
if somebody wants to follow you or learn more from you, where's the best place for them to find you?
So Twitter, or I guess X. We're going to call it Twitter. Twitter and Instagram, same handle. It's Meaty McScorely. So you can find me on both of those. Instagram's more like a training log than anything else, but we're talking some shit on Twitter all the time.
Yeah, I found you on Instagram. What does your username mean? Like, what is that from?
So I grew up in Los Angeles. When Wayne Gretzky got traded to the Kings, player that came with him, Meaty McScorely, was like his enforcer. So like if you touch Wayne Gretzky's a little dude. If you touch Wayne Gretzky, Meaty McScorely just came pounding the sand out of you, right? And so like he was my favorite player growing up. And then when I got big, when I graduated high school, I was about 120 pounds. And then a few years later, I got big, and my mom, she made a joke about how I'm not Meaty McScorely anymore. I'm not Meaty McScorely anymore. I'm Meaty McScorely. And so that kind of stuck. And, I liked that name. So I kept it.
I think whenever you followed me like years ago, at first I was like, oh, I can't like this guy because he's not vegan because of the username. And then I was like, wait, this guy's like super vegan. Cool, dude. We'll plug that in the show notes below. Brooke, do you have any more questions? Anything else?
No questions. Just thank you so much for giving us your time and coming on and sharing your story and your insight. And I think, this will inspire quite a few people. You've overcome a lot of challenges in your life, and you're a great role model for veganism. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
Of course.
I'd love to get a lift in and then a range day too. I haven't been shooting in a while.
Yeah, we got a good range here. They got a good rental department. There's a lot of restrictions here, obviously, in California, but it's still all right.
And lunch.
Come to Florida. It's like the Wild West out here.
Yeah, for sure.
Real quick, I'm gonna plug this for me and Brooke. We are finishing up our Vegans Who Lift Coaching Academy. We've got 12 students that are gonna finish up graduating at the end of this month, which means we're gonna do it again. So if you guys are listening to this and you want to learn how to become a vegan coach, mostly where we're helping people, honestly, mindset is huge, but we cover everything from website creation, taxes, getting your LLC, advertising, Instagram. We're all over. We've got a whole curriculum built out, but if anybody's looking, we got limited seats, so send either Brooke or I a message for that. And then lastly, if you guys would like us to answer your questions live on the Vegans Who Live podcast, head over to veganswholiftpodcast.com. Drop your question, we'll answer it live. And with that, I think this is it. Nick, thank you so much, brother. Brooke, it's been a pleasure as always. And guys, this has been another episode of Vegans Who Live podcast. Please share it with all your friends, and we'll see you next time.